right, here we go. And hello, everyone. Welcome back to Showing Up Whole, the place where we discuss alignment in mind, body, heart, and spirit in every aspect of our lives. And today we are going to dive into a deep conversation with Dr. Alison Kay, who's a #1 international best-selling author, energy medicine practitioner, and the founder of the Vibrational Upgrade System. With over 2 decades of experience and a decade spent in Asia mastering subtle energy and ancient wisdom, Dr. Kay has become a leading expert in holistic health, energy healing, and the chakra system, all which everybody here who listens to this podcast knows I'm very passionate about. Alison is known for her dynamic transformational approach, and she helps individuals thrive in mind, body, and spirit. She's passionate about empowering people to unlock their highest potential and live vibrant, fulfilling lives. We are diving in to talk all about wholeness with Dr. Alison. Hello, it is
Hi, I seem
wonderful.
to be like doing stuff with my hair. Sorry.
Don't worry about that. We all do. As I flick mine myself. It is great to have you here. Thank you so much for coming on. We are going to
Uh,
I have to say, I'm so
I'm
intrigued about this
excited, Christina.
conversation. The fact that we have booked 3 times, the fact
Yeah,
that different things have come in place, that
yeah.
always makes me go, what is this conversation going to be? I'm so excited.
And I'm impressed too with both of us hanging in there because a lot of the time, if I have such a tight, heavily booked schedule that
Mhm.
a lot of the times, if what is that saying? Something happens one time, shame on you. Something
Yep.
happens twice, shame on me for letting
Yep.
it happen. Yeah, so I'm kind of like that, and
Yep.
so for the efforts that went through 3 times to get here together, yeah, I'm impressed because and it means that we both know there's something that really wants to come
Yes.
through.
I agree. I agree. Because it felt like as soon as something became unaligned, it was like, no, 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 this has to happen. So
Yeah, 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 yeah. Likewise. Yeah.
everything in perfect timing, and we trust how it flows. We trust today is the right day to be recording this. So yes, thank you so much for holding true and listening to that.
Likewise.
All right, let's dive in. There's so many different pieces of your bio that I'm like, oh, what is that? So tell me what is your modality? Like what is actually you have your own program, like you have your own thing, your subtle energy approach. What is your approach to energy? What differentiates from like what we might all talk about? What is your magic touch?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. And there's some other questions in there too.
I do
So
that.
let me, no, I do too. I'm totally with you. I feel like what would help the listeners the most is to understand that when people come to work with me, a lot of the time they're people who have been, there's two key things I hear consistently, and it's, I always knew that there was something more, Dr. Allison. I didn't know how to access it until I worked with you. The second thing I hear a lot is, I've been working on this for years. I know I need to go deeper.
Mm-hmm.
So the subtle energies that I work with and that I approach, it's very much steeped in like what I piece together. I didn't like sit in any master's feet in Asia in the 10 years that I lived there. It's funny because sometimes I've had marketing teams come on board and they just want to, they automatically assume that I train with masters over there. Uh-uh. There was just really briefly, I mean, I've always been really, I went out in the woods with my older brother and was a kid and just felt connected to everything. Started writing in a journal in my teens and learned as I started to become a meditator at age 19 that, oh my God, that whole journal writing was a start to me connecting with my higher self,
Mm-hmm.
built on that connectivity I felt as a girl. So the rest of my life I've spent learning how to cultivate this inherent skills of mine. Including like having to say, this is my life, I love you mom and dad, thank you for all you've provided, but no, I'm going to choose Y instead of your X that you are so wanting me to choose. So that included my dad sitting one day when I was flying back to Taiwan after one summer break, like sitting there holding one of my bags in place. I'm with them on the bench, mom and dad. And my dad's like, Allison, what is it with you with the Chinese? I mean, there's nothing in your upbringing from us. And I'm like, it's something in my soul, dad. Like it's so. I went there and I would get like these weekly So I was a teacher and in the international school system. I wasn't happy with the amount of money I was making in the sense of a cage that I felt like my society expected me to live in for decades and then
Mm-hmm.
retire as a teacher with a master's degree. At that point, I have a PhD now, but the salary wasn't enough for me to cover like my basic needs, which, did include a massage per week because I consider that preventative health. 501 and organic produce, but a basic car, basic housing,
Yep.
I wasn't extravagant and I still wasn't pleased. I knew that I had already tromped around the world a bit and I knew that there was meant to be more adventure and fun. And I want to get up to as much as possible in this body on planet Earth, right? So I felt caged in that way. And then during that week, I had my hands over one of my first clients in like her third session. And we were both totally stoked about the results I was getting. And so I looked up at the ceiling, I'm like, okay, how can I get even more robust results for my clients? And so those two aspects coalesced, me looking at my bank book pre-digital banking days and not being pleased in that sense of a cage.
Mm-hmm.
And then asking what I asked, and a colleague within a month introduced me to the international school system. I did what I had to do, flew where I had to fly, got interviewed, got job offers around the world, chose Taiwan because it's where the Taoist principles that are behind acupuncture and
Mm-hmm.
the Qigong come from, and where they're still able to be practiced and where they
Yep.
are still implemented in their daily life actively. Whereas here in the West, we had alchemy and then they became buried in the mystery schools under
Yep.
the age of reason. Yeah. So I went and got all these different treatments during Chinese New Year break, which is in between semesters. I would go to like Thailand or Bali and get all these traditional treatments. And then in Taiwan weekly, I would get all like a Tui Na massage, reflexology. And with my Chinese, I'd ask them different stuff about how energy flew, how it worked, what was
Mm-hmm.
connected. Meanwhile, I was a meditator and teaching meditation, and still having my side gig of energy medicine sessions. And I went to India and got certified as a yoga teacher at my final year over there. And that really brought together a whole host of understanding about how energy system, the subtle energy system is a science, absolutely, and how it correlates to the different levels of our thinking, of our consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Primarily, my focus is what, if you think of like an Everglades fan boat, you know how
Okay.
they have the big fans at the back of
Right.
it?
Right. Yeah.
That passenger with the big headphones to block out the loud noise in the front of it.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so the stuff that sits in our unconscious and subconscious. So by the way, my first major in college for my bachelor's was psychology. And 3 semesters in, I backed out and changed majors saying, you guys aren't showing me how to be the happiest, most thriving version of myself, nor how to help others do that. And so I've been looking at the holistic model ever since.
Brilliant.
And so I have a Western, I have an and then I later taught AP Psych in the classroom.
Okay.
So it helped me review what I now knew as a meditator about the nature of the mind and
Mm,
neurology. So I have a
got it.
very, yeah, blended approach there. So that's in part what makes me different in the
Mm-hmm.
distinction of my work. And then the correlation of our consciousness, the levels of our consciousness to our subtle energy system and how that affects ultimately what shows up in our life and what we're willing to
Mm-hmm.
choose. So going back to the Everglades fan boat, the big fan in the back, if you think of it like your unconscious and your subconscious, and then you think of the front, the pilot, as the self-talk you do here.
Mm-hmm.
That's known to be by stats from the science that has been done on this. They say it's about 15% of our daily choices are made from there, and that 85% are made from the thoughts we don't hear.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's more like 95% from the tens of thousands of people I've worked with over the decades at this point by now. There's such an automatic not opening to perceive more possibilities than what you expect to be in life.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Got it.
And so all the work that I do, my modality that I use, that I created after learning what I was just talking about and
Mm-hmm.
integrating and bringing it all together, is to affect changes in the subtle energy system.
Yep.
That means through the chakras, as well that eventually result in the field, as well as on the consciousness, flushing more of the what I've come to call the back of the house consciousness into the frontal lobe. So someone's perception opens, they are able to, like in meditation, after this speeds up the results of meditation. So, like after 5 years of meditation, your consciousness is expanded more, you have more management over the monkey mind
Hmm.
or the ego mind, as we call it in Buddhist meditation. And you slowly have the thresholds that are put on our five physical senses opened so you can perceive more as your consciousness can handle it. And you won't go crazy because those thresholds
Yep.
are there so that you don't perceive everything because there is so much metaphysical data around each of us. We go nuts if we had to clock it all.
Yep.
So, yep. So as you make progress, the thresholds reduce and then you can perceive more. So I do clearings and activations and bring in light to flush those unconscious and subconscious traumas, imprints from parents, conditioning, karma, just a load of stuff that have learned is back there so that you then have more chi or prana
Hmm.
or fresh vital life force energy at the frontal lobe from which to perceive more of what you could be choosing and to actually have the courage and the willingness to choose more than what you have been choosing for yourself in your life.
It's funny because that was just where I was just while you were speaking about this, I was just kind of formulating my next question, and you just led into it because it's the concept of courage. You know, I was working with a group of women the other day, and we were talking about the Marianne Williamson quote, and I'm going to get it totally wrong, but when she talks about how our greatest fear is actually not our
People
lack of
fear their
ability.
power.
It
People feel
is
their
it
power
is
more than they
actually
feel their fear.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
that one.
And
Yep.
that to me, the fact that it's something that rings so true. And as soon as we bring it to the forefront, everyone goes, "Oh my goodness, yeah, that actually is it." We actually are more scared about our
No,
most
it's
powerful
crazy.
selves than and that it everybody holds themselves back of actually even going to the healing work. It's like people like to keep themselves in the healing field, in the healing
Get
space,
it.
because what happens when you're actually healed? Oh my God, no, no, no. Like we don't dare go there, right? To actually claim our full power and claim all our energy. So, how do you help people choose that? I'm a really big believer in the choice of stepping into your true self, the choice of actually being the best version of you. How do you actually help your clients choose themselves, choose their own power?
I see why we kept hanging in there to get this interview going. So my first book's title is What If There's Nothing Wrong?
Oh, brilliant. Love it. Love it.
Addressing exactly what you just said and
Yep.
more. Because it started as my dissertation for my PhD, and it explored why we lost the magic in the West, why
Oh,
we've become
amazing.
so why we've become so linear and
Yep.
rational under the more masculine aspects of how a human can function, whereas the intuitive aspects are more the feminine
Yep.
aspects of how a human can function, right? So along those lines, courage to choose more than what you've been willing to choose as a process, Christina, and all the
Mhm.
listeners. I don't want you to think that, it's you just either have it or you don't. Um, what I've learned, let me ground this into an example. So here's a woman, she's been a mother, a really good mother, cooking, really good wife. Boys of the neighborhood would always congregate at her house, and she comes to me in her 60s and just knows she wants to connect more with her spiritual power and her
Mhm.
spirit. She's always been historically with the Catholic Church and left it. It was even a Sunday school teacher. And so I lead retreats twice a year over in the UK for my vibrational upgrade practitioners. And these girls have been with me for so many years in my mastermind program, which is where they access the training and the retreats that I've and my guidance was to open up to some sacred divine feminine retreats. Now I'm always focused on that,
Mhm.
but they wanted to actually be called that. So we went to France and created one in France and Spain in May of last year, October 2025, and then in October I took them to Egypt. And in Egypt, she turned to me and she said, "So now this is like year 5. She's worked with me." And she said to me, I never would have chosen this. You took this housewife who was used to being a housewife she just had an awe in her eyes to this woman who has traveled on her own, alone, internationally.
Hmm.
And then there were other women, like in the first level, because where I'm based is the heart chakra of the planet in Glastonbury, England. That's where I lead the.
I live right near there, actually. I'm like 20 minutes from Glastonbury.
You're in Somerset.
Yes, I am.
Oh, it's my favorite county in all of the UK. Where do you live? Can I say you do it on
We
the
are, yeah, that's
podcast?
fine. Yeah, absolutely. We're just near South Petherton, so we're about 20 minutes near Yeovil. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, oh my God. So you married a Brit, did you? Or are you
Yes,
over
I
there with
did.
the,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
We're on our 25th year. Yeah, so yep, definitely. Thank
Congratulations.
you. Thank you. Yeah, we've been back and forth. I'm from Canada originally, but we moved back and forth, and then we met in Glastonbury actually 25 years ago. So
No wonder why there was such a continuing effort to get
there
us
you go.
together.
Yep.
Yeah, so I come to Glastonbury and I'm there usually for 6 weeks at a time, leading the
Brilliant.
different levels of the
Yep.
trainers,
Okay.
of leading the training. So what I'm getting at though is it's a gradual process. And I remember like other women in their first level, their first time in Glastonbury, because all the women who went with me to France and Spain and Egypt, they all have been to Glastonbury like 8 times
Yep.
for their trainings and have chosen to stay with me for this long. I remember other women saying much the same thing. I've never traveled alone before. Thank you, Dr. Allison. And there are clearings and activations I have to do as I intuit what their block is to opening up to more of their light, more of their back of the house consciousness be,
Hmm.
instead of being blocks like their mother imprinted them with. Well, what we do is we listen to the husband. He has the ruling of the nest, and we don't really speak up if we're going to risk getting the male angry. So let's just say that a woman keeps herself and her voice smaller because, unbeknownst to her, she has been imprinted with that, and
Hmm.
that lands in the subconscious. So I will come in with, I'll intuit that as her particular block to why she shrinks back a bit because
Yep.
there are other implications with the example I just gave, right? So if she's not going to speak to easily her mind because she's afraid of anger happening from the male, there's that whole, you can see what my body posture is doing for those of you who are seeing the video,
Yep.
it's shrinking back, right? So it has, so then I'll start working on where she's shrinking back with clearings and activations. And I'll find like a trauma where maybe in school she went to present something and the kids laughed at her. And that was, very impressionable. So it's a process of unwinding the various unconscious and subconscious causes of her to shrink back and of gradually more life force because every clearing has an activation. So then I'm activating her latent potential and all the higher, so gradually her higher self is
Yep.
becoming more active and and it again it speeds up the process of meditation so that if she hears a limiting thought, which she can now observe her mind because the detachment is there, instead of being her thoughts,
Hmm.
she can now choose to even redirect from a limiting thought into, hey, you know what, I actually want to choose this, because she's more connected with her, what causes her to uprise in joyous energy in her heart. The Chinese and the yogic culture both believe that the spirit resides in the heart. So just that simple uplifting feeling is
Hmm.
guidance, right?
Yep.
It's not some big
Absolutely.
like veil lifting, third eye oming thing where you got to listen to all these singing bowls and do all this stuff. I mean, like intuition shows up in many different ways. So I hope that that starts to answer your question. It's a
Yeah.
pretty involved
It is. It is. And I mean, the
process.
fascinating thing is when we take, I think there's and I love how you use the word activation because it is activation after activation after activation. Like something that I always work on is all that choice of yourself is truly like small little choices along the way.
Totally.
The first choice is something that always fascinates me. It's when that point comes where someone goes, no, there is something more. I know there's something more. I sense there's something more. I'm done. I need to figure out what the more is. So that
Yeah.
is like the one choice that is a leap of faith, isn't it? Like you have to actually, and I find it a fascinating thing. It excites me whenever I see someone actually make it because It's the one leap of faith. They haven't had the activations yet. And then once they have the activation, each small activation, each small choice, the choices do get easier. I mean, when someone feels
Totally.
that lift of joy within their heart and they know that they're feeling more aligned, they're going to come back to you and go, okay, now what? Now what? Now what?
Yeah.
So it's that first one when they haven't had that at all. And the fear of the unknown, the fear of what they're losing and letting go of, because society has told them that that's what's important. How do you support people in that? How do you support people in the actual choice to step away? You yourself, like you had to make those choices as you told your parents, I'm sorry, I'm getting on the plane again. Like you knew the activation that was happening to you in Asia, even though your parents didn't understand it. So what was it like to get on the first flight to Asia? How do you help people and how have you identified that choice within yourself, that very first one?
Uh, I like the beginning part of what you talked about. It reminded me of being a classroom teacher. And let's say so I taught English literature because that's ultimately
Okay.
what I ended up. I studied
Ooh,
society and humans, so psychology and sociology and marketing, how we get conditioned from advertising and marketing through the art form of English literature and
what a
creative writing.
great,
That's
that's like the perfect blend. I'm sorry.
Thanks. I mean, I progressed through those different majors. English lit was my fourth. I did
That
yeah, yeah. So
in the
I
long
had
run. Yeah.
yeah, so I was teaching English lit. I think I was teaching um, Edgar Allan Poe in the classroom, and I remember observing. So this is two like sophomores, 10th grade, uh, eight, 50, 16-ish years
Yep.
old. And so they hadn't yet had an experience of successfully, and Poe is pretty tricky
Hmm.
to interpret Poe's symbolism. And so they hadn't yet known or understood even the definition of symbolism.
Yep. Of course.
So I'm teaching them a brand new concept. And
Hmm.
so fresh unfamiliarity, raw territory. And so I gave the explanation. And then once I gave them the practice to figure it out themselves and they had success, they now were more confident and able to be more trusting and faithful of that capacity. So, how do I encourage the person to make that first action?
Hmm.
Because when I was saying activation, I was saying when I run, the way that I've been working for years now is more, even though I do one on one still, it's more group work. So, for like the last uh, what do we 15 years, 16 years, I've been using my voice to run clearings and activations on people in a group setting from a distance, remote or in person. So the hands-on part doesn't come in play unless you have a one-on-one with me, and I barely do one-on-ones anymore except for the people at my highest
Hmm.
level program. So I'm running clearings and then immediately following it with an activation that in part activates their latent potential and new possibilities and blessings so that they're getting assistance from all the actual multidimensional metaphysical support that I am able to conjure and that their system receives. So that I just want to be clear about the activation. Every single clearing, it's never focused only on the problem, and it always brings in, okay, what's the latent potential behind the storyline of the
Yep.
limitation? Yep. Okay.
Absolutely.
So coming back to how do we get them into that choice mode to choose more for themselves? A lot of people seem to need crisis, right, Christina? They
Hmm.
need, okay.
Yep.
So we're not talking about someone being forced to deal with themselves and evolve through crisis. We're talking about somebody who wants to grow their
Yes.
lives
Yes.
and wants to go. I did that distinction's important. Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things I love to do is to build somebody's inner cheerleader. So I will help boost them with their desire for wanting more for themselves. I'll do it indirectly. I learned a lot living amongst the Chinese, and one of them is indirectness. So I will come in what I would say through the back door and do clearings and activations to help them want more for themselves.
Okay.
So then their higher self is now more activated and helping
Yep.
also to manage the lower mind. So in the moment of choice, they have more, and I'm literally doing clearings and activations on courage to
Of
choose what
course
it
you
is
are.
you really want to. I have a product in my shop actually that's going bigger with your asks and increasing your receptivity, you
Brilliant.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I will work with that dynamic of getting their higher self more available and accessible and increasing their desire to kind of like nurture and nourish themselves.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
And so that increases more wanting more self-love, more self-kindness, more self-nourishment.
Yep.
A lot of this are the feminine
Hmm.
aspects and increasing those instead of the hard, dry, logical, linear, reasoned
Yep.
masculine paradigm.
Absolutely.
Yes. And it's part
Absolutely.
of what's happening on our planet right now is that rebalancing and in the West, bringing back the more divine feminine that's been suppressed, and in the
Yeah.
East, more of the divine masculine that's been suppressed.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, that's a very good way of looking at it. Okay, I'm going to try to use words to talk about words. I'm fascinated by, first of all, what you said about how in group work you actually are using like vocal activations. Is that through words or is that through just sound, out of curiosity? Or is it through actual use of blessings when you actually work with group work?
All the above.
All the above. Okay.
Mhm.
Then when you actually add in the
You forgot to
English,
use the word energy. The whole primary thing is the energy
yes.
behind it all. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I'm fascinated by words. I love words. I am a natural writer. I'm also an actress, and I've had my and English lit is a
Fun.
thing that's fun. So I understand the power of words, and I find this a fascinating when you bring in your English lit degree as well, and you throw that in. I know you understand the power of words. People take words far too
I've written four
lightly these
books.
days. Yeah, exactly. So. How do you help people understand the power of words? And how do you actually use those with your clients, within your group work? How do you help people understand the power of their own words? Because like self chatter, so the stories that people tell themselves, the language that we use in the subconscious, in the back fan that you were talking about, eh, in ultimately it's energy of words, they're energy imprints of words, but we use words so casually and people don't understand the energy link. Is this something that you help your clients understand? I'm trying to figure out if there's an actual question in here, but I think you understand where I'm going.
I
I'll let
do.
you take
I do.
over.
I do. Um, so I know that this is a more advanced concept, and I get to it once they have had enough clearings and activations to clear out more of the ego mind.
Hmm.
In Buddhist meditation, we refer to your personality level self that people would point to you and say, he's like this, she's like this.
Yes.
The self-talk you're used to hearing, including both the aspirations and the limitations, that self-talk is called the ego mind. Now, it's not just the mind, it's ego. So it's where your ego attaches to your mind and it shows up in your self-talk. The rest of your consciousness isn't called ego mind. So once we have purified and shifted enough of their ego mind
Hmm.
by me like intuiting where they're limiting themselves for whatever reasons and then giving clearings and activations, the vibration is raised overall of the human. And when your vibration is higher, you are a stronger energetic force individually, locally,
Hmm.
to also connect with the non-localized consciousness, the Tao, or I call it the field of unlimited possibilities. People call it the universe. When you are at that level, you can you co-create or manifest more effectively. That's when I start to bring in watch your words. Now, I will call people on their self-talk, and a lot of the times where I see people shift, I tend to value the energy medicine clearings and activations more than I do like my teaching, and even you guys listening to me now, like there's transmission that happens through my voice, and I tend to undervalue my teaching, and my coaching, as I've been reminded many times. So one of the times when I'm talking with people, and I see that they're thinking of something as a problem, I will simply reframe it.
Hmm.
And in that reframe, there seems to be energy with it so that they have a new understanding and then in that new understanding, they open to a higher version of themselves. So it's like this snowball going down a mountain between all the different tools I use of momentum that picks up. And you mentioned momentum earlier. So this is a process. And I know that from our conditioning, we expect a click and a result. We pay, we get result. And it just is like, you don't yell at a plant to hurry up and grow, and so we're this nature of the path of growth is at that same organic nature, because that's the soul,
Hmm.
that's the spark of life that's in us, like a plant and a seed for that flower, or the seed
Yes.
for that plant. We are the same. So I see one of the biggest mistakes I see that I'm consistently up against clearing and activating is those expectations from the conditioning that then get projected onto this path.
Yes.
And then the conclusions people end up with of this doesn't work, or I'm not worthy, she has success, I haven't yet, and giving up too soon. And so one of the other things I end up understanding a lot too is the the ego mind interprets things the exact opposite in the way the universe means. So the focus on words, if it's from an egoic level, catching where it's like a lower capturing, almost like a
Yep.
stopping
Got it.
of
I know.
energy.
Yes.
Whereas where if you're using words that induce a flow, then those are the higher vibrational words. And you, as much as you possibly can, and I don't tend to give advice. It's actually, I have 10 commandments for the vibrational upgrade practitioners. And the first one is do not ever give advice. And I was just almost, because you can get it from your parents and family.
Yeah.
This is all about intuition. And so it's the same with me. That's why I tend to rely on not the talking, is we're sitting here talking, and not the teaching. And that's one of my main talents and skills that helps people is teaching, because I want it to be accurate perception, and I want it to be pure, and I
Hmm.
don't want egoic interpretation involved. I want to be able, and I do transmit, guidance that somebody else isn't seeing. I like an owl. It's a very divine feminine skill. The
Yep.
owl, you know, um, can turn its head 360 degrees. And that's actually one of my mixed metaphor here, but one of my nicknames is Hawkeyes, because of the power of how I can see. And that did not help me in my 20s with my romantic life, by the way, because I could see right through the games, the cat and mouse games, right? And so I wasn't so subtle.
Yep.
But yeah. Uh, but nowadays, I've learned how to use it in a way that helps others. And so this is an area that we talked about in our brief chit chat before, and we went live with the recording, and I would love to bring this in, because this universe of how this all works in the invisible world behind the veil of physical life, it's, as many of you already know, it's like the more you learn there is to learn.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so opposite of teacher raising your hand and being right and feeling the accolades and the approval, going home to parents with like A plus or 4.0 and getting the approval and the love. It's not about being right. And one of the things I've been saying for years is I don't need to be right, I need to be happy. And
Hmm.
I don't need to be right, I need to have accurate perception. So one of the things that I see is that when people start coming into this spiritual path or metaphysical world where they're considering more than just the physical, the approach is still very egoic, and it's still very much from the conditioning of logic, linear, concrete,
Hmm.
sequential of our old paradigm, and it doesn't translate. And one of the ways I see people do that is, like I said, apply those expectations to how this should work, when you should have something healed, when you should have something fixed, and that there's a problem to begin with.
Fantastic. I what often people don't understand about what we're discussing is that you cannot fully come at it intellectually. And I love how you're actually bringing this whole conversation in, because intellectual does lead to linear, and it leads to little tiny boxes. And that leads to, I did it. This
Yep.
level of success. And I think, especially in the times we're living in, it's more important than ever that people understand that in their being of themselves, in their seed of their potential, there is always a seed of potential, and they are continually growing and expanding in new, unending ways. And that is not something that's quantifiable. You don't check box get it. And I really am hearing that through everything you're discussing, that it's really important to actually shift your entire understanding of what, you know, air quotes here, success looks like when we're talking energy, spirit, being true to ourselves. Because as long as you're actually becoming curious about yourself, in a lot of ways, you're already successful. The observer self is successful. Would you agree?
What do you mean by the observer self? Do you mean the higher self? The
Yeah, when
intuitive
you're
self?
actually when you're shifting your perception to actually observe where you are, when you start making that choice of saying no, that more is something I'm going to listen to, already you are on the road of success. You are already successful because you are already starting to choose a whole version of yourself versus the logical contrived version of yourself
Yeah, I would agree.
and the linear version of ourselves.
Yeah.
The yeah, go ahead.
No, it's interesting because it's almost like the energy just shifted in an interesting way. And it feels like talking about the times that we're in and dropping that. It's so stealth. My gosh, Christina and listeners, it's like, I mean, I'm ridiculously logical. I was brought up in a family where my older brother and I have two younger brothers, but my older brother and I would like watch Star Trek, and it just,
Join the club.
and yeah,
Yeah.
just a really intellectual, I mean, I have a PhD for God's sakes. So a really intellectual, logical geared home and society, Boston, Massachusetts, place that prides itself on Harvard being the first university in the United States. And I moved there. I moved out of there as soon as I was done with my undergrad. So the expectation of it to show up in a concrete sequential way, even if you are like inspired by this point of our conversation and you are, we're still in the beginning of the year. And when this goes live, it's even before the Chinese New Year, where the year of
Mhm.
the wind horse comes in.
Yep.
And so the freshness of the new year, you're wanting to make changes. And what I'm getting at is you may have some step by step, or you may have 5 steps. We all see that on social media, 5 steps to fill in the blank, your goal, your target.
Yeah.
Expecting things to work that way is part of the carryover from the old paradigm. 2 of my 4 books are about 2012 to 2032, the 20-year window, what is considered humanity's greatest evolutionary leap. And another nickname for it is our spiritual awakening times. And so I have been tracing all along it. I had a radio show that was weekly for 2.5 years. I interviewed experts to understand what the nature of these times were about. I was asked to do this radio show on the Mayan galactic alignment. Nothing I was doing in the public arena was about that at all. But I was taking clients on private VIPs down to the Mayan ruins because it's just a hop, skip, and a jump from where I am. Yeah. So I ended up being one of the experts on the nature of these times and was invited to be on a cruise and be the energy medicine practitioner and the yoga and meditation teacher with a panel of experts looking, talking, but
Mm.
also looking through telescopes on the top deck of the
Oh,
ship and
amazing.
getting to Chichen Itza on December 21st, 2012. And we had been asked to wear all white. There was a special permission given to us to do a ceremony with the Mayan shaman there. I was in bare feet. I had just been there within the previous year in bare feet at that time, and the ground wasn't shaking or earth shattering. But on December 21st, 2012, there was like lightning rods coming up through my feet. It was so electric. There were TV crews from around the world there. I was seen as far away from a client in Poland. My aunts up in the Northeast saw me. There was a big deal. And so there have been certain steps, phases to this 20-year window as we shift out of one paradigm that we have been in for centuries
Hmm.
into a new era. And it's already feeling different and it's going to feel different. 2026 is definitely a year where even if you're not tuned in, which all of you are, because you're found Christina, you found this podcast, you can sense something's different. So we are meant to be going for our highest potential now, and applying that concrete, sequential, linear, step by step thinking, framing, imprinting of functioning of our mind. It needs to be balanced by the understanding of, okay, so if I'm going to actually live my life and get up to as much as I possibly can while I'm in a body on planet Earth, then that means I need to go to a different tool, because all my mind can do, the nature of the ego mind, is to look at the files and the data stored from what's already happened.
Yes.
So I can't access this new unknown because the ego mind's meant to protect me in the unknown. And so it naturally presents resistance anytime I'm approaching something new. It's not just personal to me. There's a layer of that is the nature of the ego mind. Lions and tigers and bears, oh my.
Exactly.
So for me to go into a new territory, I need to use a different tool. And the way that I see it happening is, and have for quite a few years at this point, is okay, as you talked about, Christine, in the beginning, having that courage to make that first choice of shifting, going left or going right instead of continuing straight. And then and that a lot of the times, if not all of the time, comes in from inspiration from the higher self or the heart or the soul or the spirit, however you want to refer to it, right?
Hmm.
It's not, it could appear to you as a thought, but if you take a minute and notice the texture and tone of the thought, it is higher.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then you take that one step, even though your mind, just said this last night in my mastermind call, even though your mind, to a woman just beginning it, even though your mind is predicting what will happen if you make this new different choice, and it's possibly based on past life stuff, karmic stuff, imprints, parental lineage stuff, conditioning, traumas you have in your back of the house consciousness, you will either shrink back from it, or you will predict, I will lose XYZ. I will
Hmm.
get punished. I will get hurt. So you will have this echoing
Yep.
that causes you to pull back and listen to your ego mind. So if we clear that, you'll then have more capacity to naturally be okay with, in more easily, with more grace and even excitement, choose to cut against your pattern, your habitual behavior, your habitual self-talk, and make that higher choice. And then your intuition will guide you about the next step, maybe 5 days later, maybe the next week, depending on what that choice is and how long it takes to implement
Hmm.
it and when this next step is needed. So it's as if, I mean, you can get your intuition to be working for you on demand. You can learn how to work with it and ask it questions, and you can reconfigure your consciousness and your subtle energy system so that it's like your GPS is open and you're getting the help on command on how to live from a higher level. But there's conversion of your system with all its training and conditioning from the old paradigm that just has to get
Yes.
transmuted and ready for this new era we're living in. And it's beyond what you think you already know. And if I could just, I am not totally comfortable saying that, because it sounds like I know, but what I have seen is that people think that they know, they see manifestation. I've heard about that, I've tried it hasn't worked. Or they think they know how it works, but when you come from this world of the potential, it's different for everybody.
Yes.
Christina could be having an intuitive hit for one thing, and then Joe over here could be having an entirely different hit. So like expecting it to be formulaic, it's not. Every person has a different past, has different points of dharma that they're here to evolve beyond, or
Hmm.
samskaras, as we call them in Sanskrit. Samskaras are 2 or 3 core limiting patterns that aren't necessarily a problem once you learn this is actually, a gem in here. There's actually more of my inherent soul's power in here. So if I evolve beyond this limiting pattern that I keep coming up against, oh my God, I'll have a release of way more freedom.
Amazing. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. That's I love all of this. And now it's like billions of questions coming flying through my head, and we're almost out of time.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have you back. But out of curiosity, just because we are living in the time that we're living in, and if we put a box around the time that we're living in, that can make people, well, I mean, it's a very triggering time in a lot of ways if you actually look at the box we're living in. But like you
It's
said,
meant to be.
it's meant to be. Exactly. Exactly. So when you actually come from a whole mind, from your higher self mind, from your deeply plugged in, connected space of being, when you come from that, do you
Hmm.
believe that we actually, I guess if we were to use what a lot of people call as new earth or parallel worlds or things, what do you think about the idea that people can all live on earth but live different realities in that state? Like you started touching a little tiny bit about it, but in the world that we are living in, do you believe that we actually are choosing which universe we're living in right now? If that makes sense.
Oh, you're asking such a big question, and I'm going to do my best to narrow it down.
Mm-hmm.
From what I see, perceive, and have learned, and have seen, there is too much made out of the parallel worlds thing. It hits
Nice.
social
Mm-hmm.
media,
Yep.
and there's a lot of cool YouTube videos that can get created out of it, and it can send people into a wild
Rabbit
and
holes.
crazy
Yep.
goose
Absolutely.
chase in rabbit holes. It simply is. Christina, you're living a different reality than I am
Mm-hmm.
because we are each projecting all of our beliefs, whether we hear them or not, out onto away from us, the localized consciousness, out onto the non-localized
Mm-hmm.
consciousness, and we are telling life, we are telling that neutral energy how to behave with us.
Good.
That's
Yep.
why it's
Brilliant.
not about what you know, it's about clearing out what you think you know so that you can live more in that vertical alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just very simply that we're all living different realities. When we tune into the heart, however, that's where our harmonics and our connection is happening at the quantum level. Yeah, we're all one at that level. So there are symptoms of this on social media where you have not just the algorithms causing this, but like-minded people gathering in
Mm-hmm.
groups. That's their agreed upon reality. So there are more and more people awakening in these humanity's spiritual awakening times to the beauty beyond what has been and the new potential in the new era. And it's meant to grow. So as we come out of the old paradigm where somebody's reality will cause them to go and invade another country and subject, if they're in a position of power, other people to that
Mm-hmm.
person's reality, we're moving into an era where that simply just won't occur. It won't be able to occur as more and more of us do all that we've been talking about.
Okay. So suddenly, in some ways, does that help with people making the choice? Because we live in a time where a lot of people can feel helpless, yet they sense the more, yet they wonder if they have the time to do the more. But if we actually make this is how, if you make the choice of actually finding the courage to be true to yourself and align within yourself and do the work and clear out what we've been carrying, and you actually do fully step into your best self, we are tipping the balance.
Yes, exactly.
So
Thank you for
what
hearing.
better reason to make the choice?
Yeah, I mean, if a lot of spiritual people need that. Like when I'm running in my signature program, Magic, Manifestation, and Money Flow, a lot of what I'm doing is clearing money blocks, particularly
Hmm.
for women. Yeah, because
Amazing. Yeah.
there's a specific shape to that,
Hmm.
right? There's specific beliefs women have that men don't. And so, why am I saying this? So, in money, for example, I have to seem to use, when I say I have to, I have learned to motivate spiritually inclined women to let themselves earn more money by the premise of Imagine what if more spiritual people had more money on the planet they could create, how many more forests would be saved, right? So
Got it.
acknowledging your motivation to help
Yes.
is what
Yeah.
you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is an interesting thing. 'Cause again, another back door, isn't it? It's just another back door, but it's our own back doors that we can use, where it's not a
Yes,
selfish
that we
thing
can
to make the
use.
choice. It's actually what shining our light further out into the world, but you have to make the initial choice to actually carry out your
And the
done.
continuing choice to continue to work on it. I mean,
Yes.
and I don't mean to make it sound like it's like only work. I mean, you get freer and freer. It's so
Oh,
exciting.
well, you even talked about the joy within yourself. I mean, like, trust me, that is definitely there. I mean, when you've been doing the work for a while, which, we have been, without when you actually decide to take, if you have a bad day and all of a sudden that light becomes a little dimmer, you really, really notice it.
Yeah. Yeah, the contrast is getting
Yeah,
stronger.
the contrast is a wonderful thing, but still, you really notice it and you become less and less tolerant of not actually doing the work because it's so freeing and so liberating and so, you know,
It's magnetic,
it
hey?
is
Yeah.
absolutely. So yes.
Yeah.
All right, I could talk to you for ages and ages. This has absolutely been absolutely magical and marvelous. Thank you so much
It's
for
been
coming
so
in.
lovely, Christina. Thank you for having me. I've
I want to
totally
send
enjoyed it.
everyone to your site. Make sure they know all about what you offer. Where can they find your work? Where can they follow you? Where can they buy your books? Let's give them the loot. Where do they go?
Books, Amazon, Allison, one L, J, middle initial is needed, Kay, last name. My books are all on Amazon. Sorry for those of you who aren't Amazon lovers. They're also on Barnes and Noble in North America. BarnesandNoble.com. I think you can get Barnes and Noble over
Hmm.
there in the UK. I know Glastonbury, Enlightenment, and Courtyard Books
Oh,
carry my books in
fun.
person sometimes, not
Okay.
all the time do they have them in, but a lot of the time. So my website is vibrationalupgrade.com.
Brilliant.
The
Okay.
program where you would have this work done on you is magic, manifestation, and money flow.
Okay.
That would be what you'd want to get involved in.
Fantastic. Well, we will have all of that in show notes and we will send everyone your way. Thank you so much. I look
It's
forward
been a
to,
pleasure.
who knows, maybe having a coffee in Glastonbury. There you go.
Who knows?
Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon. Love and light,
Namaste.
everybody. Namaste.